this is Joseph Ixu with Premier Castle Realty. And thank you very much for joining us on this podcast regarding the 2023 tax protesting. Okay, listen, we're going to cover some scenarios, some items of interest, and also some techniques and also a strategy that I would recommend that you follow. You know, it's totally up to you to do what you want with this information. Basically, we're going to try to give you as much insight into the process as possible, because I would guarantee that probably the majority of people that are going to be listening to this have not protested any taxes previously. And it's also important for you to understand the process as you get into this conversation with the appraisers and the review committee. Okay, so first of all, I want to make sure you understand that there's two different type of boards. Okay, there's going to be the informal conference and then the formal hearing. The informal conference gives you an opportunity to discuss the lead appraiser about the property value of your home. And then the formal hearing is going to be an opportunity once, if you cannot settle your differences, then go to the formal hearing where you're going to have a 3-member board plus a leader and the appraiser, maybe even the same appraiser that you talked to during your informal hearing. All right. So appointments are required. You cannot just show up to this appraisal district and just expect to be seen. They're not going to see you. All right. But if they're not going to see you in either case, if you do not fill out your protest by 15th May. So the deadline is quickly approaching. I would recommend that you do so. Even if you want to fill out the form, you might want to protest, but then maybe later on you change your mind. No harm done. Now, if you don't fill out a protest, then you cannot talk to them about changing the assessed value for this particular year. You have to wait till next year. Okay, so I just want to let you know that you are entitled to an explanation of how they came up to this assessed value, and that's the biggest mystery of all. Especially for those individuals that just purchased recently, you may have a appraised value or an assessed value for taxes that is 50, 60. I've heard some $100,000 above what you pay for the house. So that those numbers are way off, and I'm going to show you how you can actually talk that price down quite effectively. Okay, so thank you very much for coming into this podcast. We're going to get started. So here we go. As we get started tonight, I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what to expect once you file your protest. Now, I am going to put the actual form on the actual podcast, but I want to kind of show you what it looks like. So you probably already received one of these, right? So it has all the information in there. It says appraisal review board protest hearing. So there's 2 critical dates on here that you need to keep in mind. Okay, you don't want to miss them if you really want to protest your taxes. Okay, so the informal hearing. Now the informal hearing, okay, it's basically where you get to meet with them before you have the actual full-blown 3-member, 1 leader, and the lead appraiser is called a formal hearing. All right. So, what gives you the opportunity to actually go to this or informal hearing is that basically you need to file your protest. Okay. You cannot go into this meeting without an actual appointment. All right. So, the protesting actually allows you to actually work past the deadline. So, let's say, for example, you file on the 15th or you file before that, you're going to be working even if you don't agree throughout the whole process, because you have the informal hearing, then you have the formal hearing, and then if you appeal them, then you got additional time to actually prepare for even another meeting. Okay, so filing the protest, like it says on the screen, allows you to work with the appraiser to work with you beyond the protest deadline. Okay, it provides you need to provide a good contact information, phone number, email. You don't have to provide your opinion. The form says it's optional, and I wouldn't put it on there. Okay, protest can be filed online, so it's very easy to do. It doesn't really take a lot of time. The thing here is appointments are required. Okay, so if you don't have an appointment, don't show up to the hearing, because you're not going to be seen. They're going to not talk to you. They won't have. They're really busy this year. Okay. Rightfully so. Okay, so what is the informal hearing conference? All right, so basically the informal hearing is a pre-meeting with the appraiser. Okay, only the appraiser, the lead appraiser that actually did the appraisal on the area that you live in. Now, the one thing they don't tell you at this meeting, it's that this is a mass appraisal, which means your property may not be appraised individually. So they take into like properties or as like properties as they can through their review. Okay, so that's one thing that works against you because they average everything out. Okay, so the informal conference with the appraisal district can result in resolving your protest before the ARB meeting. Okay, so basically what they're going to do is, let's say for example you just purchased the house, let's say last year or a couple years ago, maybe most recent is what they're going to look at first, and you may be able to settle it by basically coming up with your closing statement. So your closing statement tells them what you pay for the house, and they're going to honor that. Okay, they're going to say, okay, we're going to honor that, and they may even be lower than that by $3,000 to $5,000. Okay, now if you're happy with that amount, by all means, you don't have to do anything else. You can just sign on the dotted line. It's basically you're going to sign on a form that is called, and I like the title, it says settlement and waiver of protest. Okay, so you're going to settle your protest and you're going to waive the rest of the actual process because you're going to agree of the price. So let me read you what it says on here. It says, I acknowledge that the subject matter of the protest filed in the above date concerning my property described above has been settled. I hereby withdraw my protest and waive the right to do any further proceedings in this manner. So you're waiving your right to continue the process to determine whether you can lower your house even further. Okay. Now some of you would say, well, how can we do that? Well, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. All right. So if you're not able to resolve resolve the issue, okay, you can protest formally. So obviously you take it to the next level. At the formal hearing, the ARB listens to both the taxpayers and the chief appraiser. Okay, so the chief appraiser is going to have more information because they haven't given you everything that you need to do to actually protest. Okay, you know you can protest. That's what they wanted you to give to give you that information. But they don't tell you what you can protest. Okay, and so the appraiser is going to be the one that's going to have a lot of information that may rebuke your information. So that's the key. All right. So again, you are entitled for an explanation. Okay. How they came up to your value. And we're going to go into that here next. Now is the actual explanation on the informal review procedures. Okay. So there's some things that I wanted to make sure I highlight to you so that you can get some more insight into what kind of information you need to prepare for this informal hearing. Okay, now keep in mind that they are not going to work with you as much as you think. Now you may be able to lower it, but you can actually do better in the formal hearing. Let me tell you why. Okay, so actually let me go through the process and then I'll tell you why. All right, so the informal appraisal review procedures. Okay, so the first thing you got to do is prepare for evidence. Okay, now in the form itself, it'll tell you to send your evidence. Okay, if you're going to do a affidavit. But you can take your evidence if you're going in person. Now, in this particular case, when you go for your informal hearing, they're really not actually going to take a look at all the information. They may, but primarily they're going to actually try to have you waive the process. They're going to lower the price a little bit probably, and then have you go to the next step or avoid the next step. So the one thing that you definitely need to do, if you just recently purchased your house, like I stated previously, is get your closing settlement statement from a recent purchase, okay? Or if you have a fee appraisal from a recent refinance, those two things will actually lower your prices or your assessed value to the actual sales price or the actual refinance price, okay? Now, let's say, for example, you have some issues with repairs. If you have an inspection report, now, their inspection companies charge anywhere between $300 to $500 depending on the size of the home. So it'll be a little bit out of pocket for you. Okay, so if you have a big home, it's gonna be more of an inspection. Now, if you just finished purchasing the house, then you do have an inspection, or you should have an inspection because if you use the realtor, they should have told you to actually have an inspection done on the house to protect yourself. The inspection protects the buyer. Okay, so then repair estimates, cost to cure. So basically, if you do have some items that need to be repaired, you want to have receipts of possible quotes that you have to actually do the repair. Now, sometimes, for example, I attended a meeting where the home had some foundation issues, but it also has some items that needed to be taken care of outside the foundation, so that you can settle that first, address that concern with the ground, and then that way the foundation work can be done afterwards. So, but nevertheless, you can get the foundation. Most foundation companies will do a free inspection. Okay, if you need a good foundation company, let us know. We'll be glad to recommend somebody. Now, when we recommend somebody, it's going to be 3 foundation companies that we actually use for our business, for our clients. We don't get any money from that. It's just a benefit that we have, that we provide those information to our clients. Okay, so photographs. If you take some photographs of the areas that you're going to mention as factual information, because you want to make sure that they understand what you see. Okay, so bring photographs. Market analysis, so CMA from a realtor. Now, this one here is very important. Okay, and depending on who you're working with, or if you have a realtor that you've actually talked to, or you get some comps from somebody else, or wherever you get your information from, you got to remember that in Parker County, they don't do an appraisal every year. So what's happening here is the appraisal that was done in 2021, it takes 2022, and then they finally decide the differences, the value from 2021 to 2023. So if you show up with 2023 comps from January 23 and on, they're not going to consider those, because those are 23 numbers. You have to go from 21 to 22, December 22. Okay, so the end of the month in December. That's the information that they're going to look at. Now, you want to compare apples to apples. Make sure you have the right rooms, the amenities are correct, so as close as possible. The lot size, it depends if you have a 5.5 acres or 2.5 acres, or maybe just a lot size, a typical lot that you see in the subdivision. So keep that in mind as you get your comps. You got to make sure you get the right ones. I would even look at the year of the home that's been manufactured, because the information is critical to determine, how much work that home needs to have, or how much upgrading that home needs to bring it up to today's standard. You can use that information when you talk to the formal and informal procedures. Okay, so make sure you get some good comps. Do not show up with 2023 comps to your meeting. They're not going to help you. If you need some good comps for your property, give us a call, and we'll make sure that we get that to you. Okay, so any other information you feel is valuable. Now keep in mind, it has to be subject matter. It has to be about the home. It has to be about the value, the perceived value of the house. Okay, and all evidence must be presented. So if you have anything that you want to discuss, you got to provide it to them first. Okay, you cannot add information afterwards. Okay, so make sure that you provide it before or immediately after the hearing, after it begins. Okay, that's the key. So we have a little checklist that we can provide you of the process, so that way you can check it off and say, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this, here's the information. So that way you don't forget, because a lot of times, especially if you haven't done this before, you're going to get into this meeting and you're going to get a little bit nervous. Okay, and that's natural, it's expected, but they use that against you. Okay, now after, let's say for example, you're not able to settle your differences in this particular forum, then you're gonna actually get the information in the mail, whether your protest continues or you actually have a hearing. Okay, so the appraiser may actually want to contact you, so you make sure you have your contact information. The review board will contact you if you have a hearing coming up. Most of the time they don't. They're so busy. There is a lot of people. When you go to your informal hearing, you're going to see how many people are sitting in the actual waiting room. Okay, so keep in mind, again, I can't harp this in anymore. It says you have to have an appointment. To be scheduled for an appointment, informal conference are by appointments only, phone or mail or email, in person, after protest deadline. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is your informal, usually what they do is the informal briefings are actually done during the phone, before the deadline, afterwards in person. So, but I was able to have an informal meeting before, so that's not an issue. I don't think it's been an issue this year. So All right, so that's talking about the informal appraisal review procedures. The next one we're going to be talking about is going to be, key things to consider as you go into this kind of review with you. So what we've talked about already. So first of all, you got to keep in mind that the last appraisal was in 2021. Okay, and what they're looking at is the value increase between 2021 and 2023. This is why you can't do 2023 numbers. They won't count. They're not going to look at them. Okay. So it's basically 2 years. Now, no walk-in appointments. You have to make your appointment. This reserves the right for you to protest your property value. You can do it by phone, email, online, or in person. Okay. The deadline is May 15th. I can't not, restate that with more importance than May 15th is a very important date for you. All right. So what the role is for the appraisal district. So basically, they have to keep the property values at or near 100%, basically fair market value. Okay, that's their goal. And there's different things you can do to actually work on that. Okay, basically what they tell you is that ensures proper local schools and districts state funding. There is a 10% cap on homes with homestead exemptions. Over 65 and disabled veterans have more protection. Revenue caps from property taxes without getting voter approval. And you also have, if you disagree with the value, you must file a protest. That's it. Okay. You're entitled to file a protest. Okay. So let's move on. I just wanted to make sure we review that again so that way you can have some information readily, handily in your hands and in your mind so we can get ready for getting closer to the actual process to be able to sit in front of the formal hearing. Okay, so keep in mind the form that they sent to you says that you only got 15 minutes to present your information. Okay, so when you actually show up to the actual conference or the briefing, they're going to give you a document that they want you to waive some information. It's pretty, everything they give you is they want you to waive things. Okay, so this one is called Agreement to Focus Hearing. And so basically what they give you is this document that states that you will waive the right for them to read this document in the actual procedure so you can save time and be able to present more information. Now, the thing with this is I've attended some public hearings, and the individuals in the actual ARB committee didn't even know I could attend. So that's one thing that I want you to keep in mind. If this is the first time that you're attending any of these briefings, like for example, the formal hearing, okay, primarily, you can actually show up, like say for example, your briefing is the following day, you can show up the day before and request to attend a hearing, okay? They have to allow you to do so. Now, they will check with the people that are actually in the hearing themselves, the taxpayers, and basically ask them if it's okay for you to attend. And if they say okay, then you're in like Flynn. You can actually go into the conference, into the hearing, and listen and kind of get an idea of what this all is about. Especially if this is the first time that you actually attend one, it's actually highly encouraged that you do so because it'll give you some insight on how to prepare and how not to prepare, which is probably better. Okay, so that's key number one. Okay, that's something that I wanted to share with you that not many people do. Okay, as a matter of fact, when I attended the hearing this particular cycle, I just wanted to see what was different. The person actually leading the committee didn't even know I could do this. I mean, I walked in there and he asked me, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm just a fly on the wall taxpayer." and they're like, "Okay, what are you doing here?" I was like, "Well, I'm attending a public hearing, and it's okay with the protesters if I will attend and listen in." And they're like, "Yeah, it's okay with us." And the leader says, "He can do that?" I said, and it says, "Yes, he can." So, they don't even know their own rules. That's the key. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, so anyways, it's up to you if you want to acknowledge and waive this. I didn't waive it. I just had them read it in the briefing because you get a choice of whether you're going to go first or second, and I highly encourage that you go first, specifically if you follow the strategy we're going to go into here shortly. Okay, so the ARB hearing procedures as follows. 15 minutes. That's what they tell you they're going to give you. So you got to present concise information to the committee. All right, so now there's obviously some hearing options. You can do it in person, which I prefer because I like to see the reactions. So you bring 3 copies of any evidence that you would like to the ARB to consider. Now keep in mind, obviously if you're going to have a lot of information, 3 copies is going to be kind of a lot of money. What I did was I downloaded my PDFs and put it into a memory stick, went over to Office Max, printed them out double-sided. I put a cover page on it, and I had 3 copies of the actual documentation that I provided to the ARB. Let me see if I can show you real quick what I'm talking about, because I think it's something that you can actually see. Okay, so this is the checklist that I was referencing, and I'll put a picture of this in the thing. This is we provide a script. We actually gave a script of the actual procedures so that you can actually follow along so you don't get lost. When we do the analysis, when we do the evidence, we actually take a look at some properties. We do a little spreadsheet to kind of take a look at the differences. And this is the packet. Okay, so for example, as you can see, there's the name, information, the property, and all the information that we have in the actual packet. Comms, tax information. I got their own tax information that they use. In this particular property, we have the actual closing statement. And I'm going to go into detail exactly how that panned out. So there's a lot of processing, a lot of planning to go into this. Okay, option number 2, you can do it by telephone. You can submit your evidence, but you have to submit it 3 days ahead of time. The email is evidence@parkercat.org. Okay, you can also mail it to the appraisal district. Option number 3 is a written affidavit. Okay, you got to submit your evidence 3 days ahead of time. So attach notarized. It's got to be notarized, and there's a property affidavit that you have to actually fill out, and you have to send it by certified mail. So it's going to cost you more money. Okay, I mean, if you got to do one of those 2, then by all means get it done. But I highly recommend that you attend the actual conference. It's the actual hearing. It's actually pretty interesting. Now, as you can see on the screen, there's emails there that are very important. General questions. If you have any questions, you can send it to the appraisals. Okay, if you have a signed settlement waiver or withdraw the protest, which is the actual form that they give you when you actually go to the informal hearing, and they said, hey, we've agreed to waive the rest of the process. We settled it here today. To reschedule, you can actually reschedule your conference, your meeting, evidence, and also any agent registration. You submit a tax agent form, which is like, for example, if I'm helping you out, I'll provide my tax information to the actual committee. Okay, so that's the procedures. Now we're going to go into some strategy here in a minute. So hold on, we're getting there. All right, guys. So this is the interesting part of this whole podcast, and I really enjoy it. It's because you remember at the beginning of the podcast, we mentioned that they want you to bring evidence, and you're supposed to bring 3 copies of the evidence that you want to be considered. Because there is supposed to be a 3-member board plus a leader, okay? Or a 2-member board and the leader and the tax appraiser, okay? That's basically the order there. So they want you to bring evidence. What they don't tell you, and you have to, once you get your protest information, you get the protest information, you get some guidelines, and then you get this procedures. Okay, so hearing procedures for Parker County Appraisal Review Board. Okay, so this form is like, how many pages? Let me see, 5 pages long. So and it's like maybe 8 font, or maybe 9, the largest. And basically you have like 5 pages of information that you have to decipher. Okay, now the average person, like for example, when you get some changes of information to any of your subscriptions, an update, and so you just say, yeah, accept, right? This is one that you should read because you get a lot of key information on there. So it goes into the tax code, it goes into the ARB duties, the hearing, the scheduling, property owners and agents qualifying leases, I mean, it goes into a bunch of different areas, right? It talks about evidence, Well, the one thing that I have on this screen is evidence, okay? So you are entitled not only to provide evidence, you require it, but you're also entitled to receive evidence. You can request the evidence that the ARB is using to determine your value. Now, usually you don't get it before your informal hearing, so you don't know what you don't know. And this is why I'm telling you, you can probably do better. Now, if you're happy with that number that you get at the informal hearing, by all means, hey, don't even listen to the rest of this. But if you want to try to get the most discount on that assessed value, then you have to listen to this. Okay, it says here, let's say request for a copy of the data, schedule, and formulas of all other information that chief appraisers will introduce at the hearing request should be emailed to evidence@parkercat.org. So basically, you're entitled to receive this information, but they don't tell you this in the original form. It doesn't say that you're entitled for it. They don't tell you, they don't even give it to you. They sent you this 5-page document because you I don't know, you're just a taxpayer. They want your money. So it's very interesting. Okay, so they tell you about the tax code, they tell you about the procedures itself, and I have it on the screen. This is a very important strategy that you can use to save a lot of money. Listen, the ARB hearing procedures, okay, is the evidence request, okay, the property code 41.67D, okay, says that if you request the property, the information that they're going to be using towards your hearing, and you don't receive it in a timely fashion, like for example, now let's say you went to your hearing on the 3rd, or your informal hearing on the 3rd of May, and while you're there, you knew that you could ask for evidence, right? What evidence are you using for us to determine this value? Let's say they give you a printout, okay? That's the If the appraiser is going to give you all of the information, then great. So you have it. But let's say your formal hearing is on the 10th, okay? So from the 5th to the 10th, how many days is that, right? So it's less than 14 days. That's the key, all right? So you got to keep that in mind. So on the day that you go for your informal hearing, you want to request the information that they have. You're entitled to get this information, basically what they're using to assess your property, their evidence against you, pretty much. Okay, so then they'll give it to you. Let's say they give it to you on the 5th. Okay, so at the same day, I'm going to send an email to evidence@parkercat.org requesting all the information that they're going to be using towards your appraised value. Okay, now the key here is that they have to provide to you this information within 14 days of your formal hearing. 14 days, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so if they don't provide this information within the 14 days, then listen to this. They cannot use any information not provided during the protest. Okay, so basically, if they do not provide the information to you ahead of time, then they can't use it. But if you have information that you're going to use towards the protest and you don't provide it, you can't use it either. So it's a double-edged sword, right? So you must request by the protesting party. So it's got to be requested by you. So you have to have an email, and I print it out and put it in evidence as I go into my briefing, my hearing, or any hearing that I go to. Evidence@parkercat.org that you are requesting the evidence that they're using. Okay, they must be provided 14 days before the hearing. If they cannot be introduced, if not delivered within the required time frame. So the appraiser cannot use their own data against you. You can use it because you use it as evidence to prepare your presentation, but they can't use it. Okay. They have to be delivered via email most of the time. Okay, so but your evidence, the one that you provide, you can actually provide it a CD, DVD, USB flash drive. It can be like it says, a JPEG, and all kinds of different documentation styles. What you cannot use is evidence on a smartphone. Do not even bring your smartphone there. Okay, all evidence will be retained, so they're going to keep them. Okay, important items to consider. Okay, parties must determine the presentation order. So they're going to ask you who wants to go first. I would encourage that you go first. Okay, and you also must give an opinion of the value. Okay, you can cross-examine only the appraisal representatives. You can't cross-examine the ARB committee. Okay, you can't even ask them any questions. Now, you also must give a closing argument. So it's just like going to trial. Okay. The ARB must provide computer screens if available. So they're going to have a big computer screen in front of you. They're going to look at the values of the properties and they're going to do the information that's required. Now, if you go first, okay, this is the key. If they go first and they haven't provided the information to you within 14 days, they can't use their information. So guess what? They have to go by the information that you provide. Okay? They can't even ask the appraiser any opinions about the information because he can't provide it. So guess what? You really handicap their ability to make a decision based on the information because they see so many people there. They're not going to have the information ahead readily available. As a matter of fact, they sign an affidavit that they haven't talked to each other about your property until that time frame when they walk into that room. And it's an affidavit that's sworn, and it's a sworn affidavit. Okay, you will get a copy of that. You can request it, but most of the time it'll come in the mail. Okay, now they will provide screens if you did follow this strategy, and then they have the information on the screen. You're gonna see it. They're also gonna tabulate. They're gonna collaborate and then tabulate maybe the final price, the final assessed price. Okay, and this is one key thing that I've already talked to you about. Okay, the hearings are open to the public. Now they can have closed hearings. Okay, but it requires a joint motion, and it has to be only information that's proprietary or confidential information. So in this particular Parker County office, they're going to ask the protesters, individuals, if somebody can attend and just watch the procedures. Okay, so those are the things. Now, that's what I wanted to talk to you about in regards to the evidence, because you can request the evidence. You're entitled to request the evidence and an explanation of your tax amount. Okay, that's key. All right,
guys. So that is the ARB process, both informal and formal hearings. So as you can see, there's a lot of information that needs to be considered as you go through this process of protesting your taxes for 2023. Now, if you have any questions at all, you can send it to info@premiercastlerealty.com and just write on the subject matter protest question, and we'll be glad to answer it to you. Now, we've been getting back to those individuals that actually requested some assistance from us. Now, keep in mind, because we've actually have a lot of clients that are asking for information and are looking for help. It's taken us a little bit longer to get back with you, so please be patient. The key thing here is that we want to make sure you guys understand is that if you're going to file your protest, you have to do it by the 15th. It's a very easy process to do, and then we have time to actually get ready for the actual meeting. So as long as you file it, then we'll be able to sit down with you and go over the information that you have, coach you along the way to go to the informal procedures, and then get ready for the formal hearing. I'm hoping that you learned something here today. Please, if you like it, share it with individuals that you think might want to use this information or that might have questions about it, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some additional information to them. Okay, so if you're looking for somebody to help you with your protest, give us a call at 833-722-7853 extension 3.